Good evening and welcome to the 11th of January 2021 meeting of Cabinet. My name is Doug Oliver, leader of the council. Before we go into our meeting, I would invite members who wish to say a few words regarding the sad passing of a former councillor, Keith Bridger. Christine, if I can invite you, please.
Yes, thank you, Doug. Well, it's with great sadness that we learnt yesterday that Keith Bridger had passed away. Keith was a councillor for Sidley Ward between 2003 and 2007. That was actually after I was actually on the council the first time. But I know his wife, Helen, a lot better. But having said that, Keith was a fantastic example of somebody who gave great service to his community. Firstly, as a probation officer, he worked out from Hastings police station and the courts there. And I was looking through some of the comments that were pasted on the Facebook page in the Sidley group. And there was a comment there from a guy who said that Keith helped him out and get his life back on track, and he's a top man. So as a probation officer, he obviously made a great difference. He then got it, well, always was, I think, involved in local politics, firstly as a member of the Labour Party. And then latterly, I think he stood as an independent in the elections, I think in probably now 6 years ago. But he was a very competent councillor, very, very well known in Sidley. Some fantastic comments about him, and I know that the Sidley community will miss him dearly. I'm going to hand over to Catherine, who worked with Keith on East Sussex County Council.
Yes. Excuse me. Thank you. Yes, I did work with Keith on East Sussex County Council and on the County Council Cabinet. And it's really sad to hear he died, because he was such a lovely man. I mean, I'm of a different political party, but it made no difference. He was always very kind, always extremely polite, and never rose to the bait. Whenever he was justifiably very cross, you couldn't tell. So I served on Cabinet with him on the County Council. He was involved in libraries, always very well briefed, cared very much about his subject and about the councillors, actually, and particularly his community in Sidley. So yes, he'd be a great loss to his community and indeed his family. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor John Barnes.
Yes, I would be grateful if you would pass the condolences of our group to his family. Keith was really an amazing contributor at County, a great expert, as Catherine says, on libraries, but always, I think, a great voice for his community, for his group, and a man who made a courteous and constructive effort, always in debate. I think we all, it's not going too far, almost say that we love Keith. We certainly liked him extremely well, and his passing really is a great blow. Please tell Helen how much we will miss him.
Thank you. Councillor Carl Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I mean, certainly, it seems that every single meeting we are paying tributes to a former colleague, and Keith, as has already been said, made an exceptional contribution, not just to County, but also, obviously, to Rother in his 4-year term there. But he was a very principled man, and that's perhaps why he left the Labour Party and stood as an independent. But now he's not to make that as a political point, but to make that as a point that I think underlines the fact that he was a very, very principled man, but also a true gentleman. I think the term old school is often overly used, but in terms of Keith, that certainly applied. He was a true gentleman, one that as Councillor Barnes has just said, served extremely conscientiously, never anything other than a very good contributor in terms of his contribution to debates. But as a person, he'll be certainly remembered as a friend as much as a colleague. And certainly, I'd like to make sure that I think the condolences are passed on to Helen on behalf of the council and I'm sure on behalf of all the political groups, because he made a great contribution to both authorities. He will be sorely missed, and I very much regret the fact that once again we are paying tribute to a former colleague. But yes, absolutely, he made an enormous contribution to local politics. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for everyone for those very, very genuine comments there. I knew Keith very briefly, and it's just one of these situations that you'd wish I'd known the man longer, because he was a very decent man, he was a very kind man, he was a very warm man, and it's very, very sad. I understand that Helen has also been unwell, but I think she's on her way home. So we'll ensure that these messages are passed on. Right, if we could just move into our meeting this evening. This meeting is being held remotely, and it's being live streamed via YouTube, and the recording of it will be available afterwards on our website. Councillors and officers are reminded to put their mobile phone on silent if they have one near them, leave their cameras on and their microphones when not speaking, as this will reduce feedback and background noise and saves bandwidth to prevent loss of connection. I will first do a roll call to check that all Cabinet members who are expected to attend are present. And as I say your name, please turn on your microphone and confirm you are connected. Councillor Christine Bayliss.
Present.
Councillor Jay Brewerton.
Present.
Councillor Terry Byrne.
Present.
Councillor Kevin Dixon.
Present.
Councillor Catherine Field.
Present.
Councillor Sue Projak.
Present.
Councillor Hazel Timpey.
Present.
Councillor Jonathan Vinehall.
Present.
There are other members joining us today, but you'll notice that we're no longer able to provide invitations in advance, as all members are now invited to all meetings. We'll have to try and note that members, please, that are here at the meeting this evening, perhaps you can put your names in the chat facility so that officers can pick up who is present and if missed as they came into the room earlier. So if I could leave that to members, please. Officers joining us today are Malcolm Johnson, Chief Executive, Robin Venard, Assistant Director Resources, Tim Hickling, Head of Strategy and Planning, Ben Hawke, Head of Acquisitions, Transformation and Regeneration, Richard Parker Harding, Head of Environmental Services, Licensing and Community Safety, Joe Powell, Head of Housing and Community, and Tony Baden, Finance Manager. Democratic Services Officer today and Committee Clerk is Lisa Cooper. Members of the committee will be making decisions today by a name vote. Lisa will call out each member in turn and they will either answer for, against or abstain. Members, please remember to turn on your microphone again at this point. Please turn off after voting. Those members who wish to speak, please indicate by typing your surname only in the chat facility. Please be aware that there can be a time delay of around 5 seconds whilst a member appears on screen. Each item will be reintroduced as we get to it. So if we can get into agenda item 1, please to resolve the minutes of the last meeting be confirmed as a correct record of proceedings and be signed by me as chairman at a later date. Do you all agree?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 2. Lisa, are there any apologies for absence?
There are no apologies, Chairman.
Thank you, Lisa. Item 3. Malcolm, are there any additional agenda items?
No, Chairman, there are none.
And item 4. Are there any urgent decisions, Malcolm? Urgent decision items. Sorry.
Not that I'm aware of, Chairman, no.
Agenda item 5, disclosure of interests. Members, please speak clearly if you have a personal and prejudicial, and say the agenda item it refers to. Members with a personal and prejudicial interest will be asked to temporarily leave the meeting at the start of the item. Lisa will invite members to rejoin the meeting when the item is finished. Okay, if we can move into agenda item 6.
Declaration of interest for item 11.
Thank you. Have I lost everybody? No. Okay. No. Fine. All went very, very quiet. I couldn't even hear myself breathing. I beg your pardon. Okay. Agenda item 6: draft revenue budget. A report of Tony Baden, Finance Manager. Purpose of the report: to present the draft revenue budget 2021 to 22 for approval. Tony, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. So, as the Chair's just said, this is the draft 21-22 revenue budget, which members are requested to agree. So I'll draw out a few key points for members, and hopefully that will be of use to everybody. So the net cost of services budget for 21-22 is at 16.2 million at the moment. This is an increase of 0.6 million from the 2021 budget. And this is summarised in Appendix A, and it's in the same format as the monitoring report. So hopefully members will find that useful as well. The changes year on year are also summarised in Appendix C, to just to give everybody a little bit more detail. So the future year budgets, they're also included in Appendix A, and they show that the net cost of services is reducing down to 12 million by 25-26. Appendix B shows the departmental budgets for 21-22 in greater detail. So that's at a sort of we call it cost centre by cost centre detail. Budgeted use for reserves for 21-22 is about 3.2 million, and this includes funding for capital projects. And the impact on reserves up until 25-26 is summarised in Appendix D. Before I get into the sort of detail of the report, just to point out the council is legally required to set a balanced budget, including the use of reserves, which is what we're trying to do here. And there is no actual official standard, but it might be interesting for members to note that CIPRA have deemed recently that councils with a reserves balance of less than 5% are deemed to be less than 5% of net spend, that is, are deemed to be at high risk or high risk organisations. And there's quite a lot of organisations, quite a lot of local authorities are in that position at the moment, or very close to that figure at the moment, or very close to that figure. But as members will see from the report, Rother is quite a long way from that. So, you know, comparatively speaking, we're in good shape, and we're planning to be forecast to be in good shape. But it is imperative, having said that, that we eventually set a budget that does not use that does not require the use of reserves. So we're looking at beyond 25-26 to try and achieve that. And I'll say a little bit more about that as I go through the report. So into the detail of the report itself. So paragraphs 4 to 6 say a little bit about the government grant settlement, which was announced shortly before Christmas. Rother's share of the business rates has not changed. The MHCLG, that's the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, they significantly increased the amount of rate reliefs to local authorities this year, and this is obviously to help businesses through the pandemic. But the budget for next year has been prepared on the basis that these reliefs will not apply in 21-22, and that's simply because we've had no further information or update from the MHCLG on that basis. However, we will update the estimates before February Cabinet as and when further announcements are made. Members will note, hopefully, that in the report we've made mention of a £519,000 COVID grant funding, which we had not previously expected to receive. Although it is worth noting, this doesn't match the what we estimate the ongoing cost of the pandemic will be in 21-22. We think they're going to be roughly around 961k. So still some way short, but it is, as I say, a figure that we weren't originally expecting. Just again to point out, though, that there is no indication that this funding will be ongoing, I'm afraid. So we've built that in for 21-22 only. We'll also receive £272,000 new homes bonus funding for next year, which we weren't originally expecting either. We were originally expecting about £12,000. So that's come in as a welcome source of additional grant income that we weren't initially expecting. And again, we expect that money to fall off after 21-22. So if I move on to paragraph 7 to 8, just say a little bit about the council tax base. It might be useful for members just to try and outline how we calculate the base. So, and what we do, we take all the property bands across the district, and we basically arrive at an average number of Band D households, and then this figure is multiplied by the council's Band D council tax charge, and that's how we arrive at our expected council tax income. So for 21-22, we estimate that the council tax base will reduce by about 518 Band D equivalents. And this is because of the increase in the number of council tax reduction claimants, which obviously is a fallout from the pandemic. And we've also slightly reduced the collection rate, i.e. for non-payment, for the same reason. For years after 21-22, we have assumed a 2% per annum growth. But obviously this is dependent on the speed of the post-COVID economic recovery and the pace at which Rother can deliver its other key targets with around housing, for example, where obviously if we have more homes in the area, then that would increase our council tax base as well. So the settlement confirms the government settlement confirms that the council tax referendum principles are of the higher of 2% and £5. That's exactly the same as we had last year. And our budget assumptions assume a council tax increase of 4.94%, which generates additional income of about £90,000. If I can just say a few things about the financial risks in the budget, these will always be there, pandemic or no pandemic. But paragraphs 9 to 14 outline what the main ones are. Homelessness is the cost of predicting homelessness and forecasting homelessness. Demands is very, very tricky to do, as I'm sure my colleagues in housing will be only too quick to point out. So the budget assumes that these cost pressures of nearly 300k will continue into 21-22, even allowing for the council's efforts to keep the costs of temporary accommodation down through the purchase of quality accommodation to try and avoid the costs of private sector renting. Staffing costs, the budget includes a 2% pay award, which would add about 88,000 to the total budget. The council sets its own pay awards. It's not part of the national pay bargaining process, but there may be a government expectation to fall in line with the recently announced public sector pay freeze, again just before Christmas time. The impact of COVID, the budget includes, as I said just a few seconds ago, an estimated 961,000 in increased costs. These have been reported to members at various periods during 2021, as I'm sure everybody can recall, and they could increase further should COVID restrictions continue into 21-22. And at the moment, they include our best estimates. And finally, the corporate plan. The corporate plan's been developed, as I'm sure members will be aware. It is expected that there could well be a high level of investment required to meet certain targets in that plan. For example, these housing developments that I've mentioned a couple of times now. And if such projects don't cover their cost, then that again would present a risk to the budget. So it's worth bearing that in mind, I feel. In paragraph 15. I've laid out the budget assumptions for members to take in. I won't go through them. They're hopefully fairly straightforward. Just to mention changes to the budget since the 2nd of November forecast. I've summarised those in paragraph 17. So the forecast has changed favourably by 1.6 million from when we did our forecast, which we presented to Cabinet on the 2nd of November. This is mainly through additional grant income through new homes bonus and COVID-19, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. We've been able to scale down quite significantly our borrowing costs by about £733,000, and this arose as a result of an announcement by the Treasury in November to reduce PWLB interest rates by 1%, because before then we disregarded before the announcement we had not budgeted for the 1% discount because we were not certain that it was going to happen. So that came as a convenient bonus for us, if you like. And reserves, paragraphs 18 to 19, I've mentioned these already. So there's a summary of the impact of reserves for members to peruse, and again, hopefully that won't be anything new in there. So finally, that's all I've got to say. I'm happy to take any questions. I suppose that there are a number of key messages from this report, but I just need to reiterate again. Again, members will be aware we're going through an exercise at the moment to identify savings, service efficiencies and additional income. And there's over 600k detailed in Appendix A for next year for the council to meet. So it's absolutely imperative that we meet that target. Otherwise, it will increase the pressure on our use of reserves. So I just wanted to make that point. But I'm sure members have truly understood that now anyway. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Tony. And I think that the comments that Tony's made and some of these pleasant surprises in one or two cases just shows how difficult it is to put meaningful budgets together with so much uncertainty that's out there. But thank you for all the work that you've been putting in on this. And I know you've been working very closely with members, and the work coming forward that we are very, very keen to work on to see this sort of ownership of members and officers so that we can actually go forward in order to provide what we need to be providing, maintaining delivery and services, resources are deployed and overcome any barriers that we find are in the way. So thank you very much for your work. Are there any members of Cabinet that would like to ask a question at this stage before I invite other members, please? No? On that basis, Councillor Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. Tony mentioned leisure, swimming centres and cultural services in 12B in his report. And quite specifically, the need for maintaining additional financial support to ensure building and plant are maintained. And that includes the Delaware. What concerns me is that the Delaware Pavilion is floodlit every night at the moment. This impinges adversely on our carbon neutrality target, or our carbon neutrality commitment, and it impinges adversely on our financial stability commitment. While we're scraping for savings, an organisation to which we've just given an additional £365,000 in additional support is spending it on floodlighting, contrary to two of our key corporate objectives. How do Cabinet members feel about this?
Is there a response from anywhere? I think this is something we can take up with the Delaware. Thank you for pointing that out, Paul. I think that's something we move forward on. Any other questions? I think Councillor, is that Mary or John?
It's John wants to ask the question.
Thank you, John.
Leader. It's probably a presentational point, but I was struggling when Tony was talking with Appendix A to understand the figure of naught alongside pay inflation in the coming year, when I believe we're making provision of about 88,000 for that. Presumably there will be a part year effect. I'm not sure how we treat increments in the way we present it, but it's a bit odd seeing naught when in fact we're told there is going to be pay inflation. Similarly, when we come down to savings and income generation, we are investing quite heavily in property in order to generate income to help balance the budget. This has been a strategy for some time, which you're continuing, and yet we're showing no increase in income in little one on page 8. And I found that again slightly puzzling. It shows no increase in income over all the remaining years of the strategy. There's one other point which occurred to me which is slightly different and is not presentational. One of the problems, I can understand why you're doing it, of taking a one-off payment into the budget, is that it will mean that when we put up council tax year on year, which I suspect we're going to have to do, there will be a slightly smaller percentage take than if we had not put that one-off money in, because we're using it for a recurrent purpose. I just wonder if we have done the calculations on that to make sure that is genuinely beneficial. I imagine it is, but perhaps by the time we look at this at scrutiny, we could have an answer on that one. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you, John. Tony, would you like to go back on any of the points that have been raised?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The point that Councillor Barnes makes about pay inflation, it is presentational. The figures for 21-22 have been embedded within the individual departmental budgets because we calculated the salaries post by post at a departmental level. For future years, we took if you like, a global figure for the council based on global spend. So there's less sort of certainty and precision around the pay increase numbers for years beyond 21-22 for obvious reasons. So it is there one way or the other, but it is presentational. So sorry if that was a little bit misleading. And the similar sort of response really for the investment for the property investment strategy income. Those incomes have now been folded in or blended into the ATR, the acquisition, transformation, regeneration budget. So it is in the budget, and I can happy to give members more information should they require that. Sorry, Chair, I wasn't quite clear on Councillor Barnes's third point. I didn't quite follow it. I apologise for that.
Would you like to come back on that, John? Your third point.
Yes, actually on the presentational point, we may be doing ourselves a disservice in terms of transparency, showing no increase in income, because the public may well not quite understand what we're doing. But that's thinking about outside the meeting, I suspect. On the point is, when you look at your council tax increase, it goes 2% on your existing budget. If you put in a one-off revenue offset, then that 2% is going to be amount to less year on year, marginally less. And the question is, obviously, there comes a point at which that crosses over. I just hope that we are, since we're going to pay interest out, that we have actually got the crossover point right. I'm sure we have. It's one really that Tony would welcome clarification when we get to scrutiny. I don't think tonight is the right place to do it.
Okay. If you're happy with that, Tony.
Yeah, that's fine, Chair. So just one other point with regards to the property income from the property investment strategy. We did actually outline that in more detail in the report that went to Cabinet in November. But yeah, okay. So again, I'm more than happy to provide further information if needed. Thank you. Councillor Christine Bayliss.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to respond to Councillor Courtell's point about the Delaware Pavilion, and just remind him that we've had several weeks now of quite expensive criminal damage that has occurred in that particular area, and I would be very reticent about closing down all the lights at the Delaware in the evening, because it does give a sort of sense of security for people who are walking their dogs late at night and what have you. I think we can probably we'll probably see now that Christmas is over that the lights that they've been displaying are perhaps taken away, but I would hate to see the place in complete darkness.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Christine. If we can Lisa, if we can actually move forward on this to resolve the draft revenue budget be considered by overview and scrutiny for its meeting on the 25th of January.
Chairman, can we have a mover and a seconder first, please?
Thank you. Councillor Dixon, if I could just ask you to sum up and move, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to Tony for his very comprehensive report as ever. And he's described much changed figures, and unfortunately this month it's much improved figures, but we shouldn't be complacent because, as we know very, very quickly, these figures can change and not always for the better. One point I'd like to pull out of these is the council tax base figure, and Robin has already started to downsize the actual tax base over the next couple of years, because we do believe that as the pandemic goes on, the council tax base in real terms will continue to shrink for a while. So that's something that we need to keep an eye on. That's due to the amount of council tax benefit that we have to give. As Tony said, work is ongoing with 3 departments now had our meetings where we've gone through each of the service budgets line by line in an effort to set the balanced budgets, and also, most importantly, to start to rebuild reserves for the capital programme, the corporate plan that's going to be coming up. And in this work, we won't be afraid to invest to save for the long term if that's what it takes. If we can save money on an ongoing basis, then we need to invest the money now to do that. And purchasing property as temporary accommodation is a very good example of how we're doing this and how those costs are coming down. So I'd be very happy to move this report, Chairman, and ask Councillor Vinehall if he would second for me.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Jonathan. If we can take a vote. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Chairman. OK, members, if you can answer for, against or abstain. Councillor Bayliss.
For.
Councillor Brewerton.
For.
Councillor Byrne.
For.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Oliver.
For.
Councillor Proshak. Councillor Timpey. For. Councillor Vinehall.
For.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, and just again further thanks to Tony and the team, because it's been a really tricky period to bring these figures together, have them meaningful. So thanks for all the work that goes into that, and thank you, Kevin, for bringing the meetings together of the various service managers in identifying budget setting, because that's such an important part of our work going forward. If we can move into item 7. So this is the corporate plan consultation exercise to approve the draft corporate plan and agree the programme for the public consultation. This is coming forward. Ben, are you involved in bringing this forward, or is Councillor Vinehall going to introduce?
Oh, Ben.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. Yes, so this is the draft version of the corporate plan to be subject of a public consultation. So this is the opportunity for the members of the public to review the proposals put forward by the political leaders of the council, demonstrating the priorities over the next few years, and to provide their responses. At this stage, we've provided a very brief consultation programme attached to the plan. I mean, the plan is set out under the 10 key principal priorities as set out by members, with associated actions and milestones as to when it's anticipated that officers working with members could seek to achieve those. The programme, we're hoping to conduct a 6-week consultation, which would enable us to bring the consultation responses back to Cabinet by May, with a full council agreement later that month. This is shorter than usual, but it is important that we, that given everything that's been going on in recent times, that we have a corporate plan that gives steer for both members of the public and for officers as to what it is we're trying to achieve. and informs future decision making, such as budgets and staffing decisions, etc. So we do hope to have a fully adopted corporate plan for May, and now is the opportunity for members of the public to give their opinion on the proposals.
Thank you very much for that, Ben, and thank you for the work that's been put in by members and officers on this, because it has been a joint effort, and Councillor Vinehall has taken a lead on behalf of the Alliance, and I'm very pleased at the work that's come forward, and thank you, Ben, for your team in bringing it to where we are. Are there any members of Cabinet, apart from Jonathan at this stage, that may want to make any comments? If not, are there any other members? This is an opportunity for consultation, so therefore there will be a chance for everyone to feed back into it if that's necessary. Without any names coming forward, if I can invite Jonathan, please, to sum up and before we go to a vote on this.
Oh, thank you, Leader. Thank you. Look, I think this corporate plan has been a true collaboration between senior officers and a broad range of members as well. And I think it has flowed pretty well once it got underway. You know, it had to be delayed a little bit due to the middle of the year COVID situation. You know, it's not intended to be a glossy brochure with aspirational or unquantified goals, or goals which are outside our control or with vague deadlines. It's intended to be a plan which is focused on 10 key objectives which we can have direct control over, clearly quantified, clear set of actions with specific deadlines. I'm sure that there'll be some positive comment and constructive contribution that comes as the plan moves through the consultation process, and they're going to be welcome, because you can't cover everything off. It's also likely that, given the current pandemic, the plan will need some review at some point. It's a living document, and we can't see every unforeseen obstacle or opportunity that arises. So I think the objectives and timescales are ambitious in a number of cases. I think there are great challenges with some objectives, but at the same time, I think they will cause us to face some hard decisions and choices. But in my experience, that will lead to some more creative thought processes and more creative solutions, and that can only be a good thing. So I'm very happy. I thank Ben for the enormous amount of time he put in, and all the other officers as well. I think we had a really positive experience doing it. So I would propose the officers' recommendations as stated. And if I could have somebody to second that, perhaps Councillor Prochak.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very, very happy to second this. And again, echo everybody's work. Thanks to everybody's work in this. I really am proud of this document at this point, because they're actually, there's no blue sky thinking here. There's no happy aspirations that we don't know how to deliver them. I think it's a very valuable document. It does reflect the Alliance's ambitions and aims, and it also helps officers know the direction of travel and where we're trying to get to. So thank you to all who've been involved with this. And, you know, it would be nice to have some. I loved the pictures in the last administration's corporate plan. They were lovely pictures. But this one, as Councillor Vinehall said, is a working document. And so I'm happy to second it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sue. Yeah, and I just really endorse the way that there's just been this strong working together of a collaborative between officers and members in understanding what the intentions are. So, Lisa, if we could have a vote on this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, councillors. Councillor Bayliss.
4.
Councillor Brewerton.
4.
Councillor Byrne.
4.
Councillor Dixon.
4.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Oliver.
4.
Councillor Prochak.
4.
Councillor Timothy.
4.
Councillor Vinehall.
4.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you for everybody on that. Let's move forward into agenda item 8, which is Report to Cabinet titled Battle Civil Parish Neighbourhood Plan. Rother District Council representations to the Regulation 16 consultation. The purpose of this report is to present the Council's representations made for the Regulation 16 consultation on the Battle Parish Neighbourhood Plan. It's a report of Tim Hickling, Head of Service Strategy and Planning. I can leave that with you, Tim, if I may.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. So this report is to enable Cabinet to make representations on behalf of the Council on the Battle Neighbourhood Plan Regulation 16 consultation, which runs for 8 weeks ending on the 29th of this month. So the main report lists the supporting documents submitted with the draft neighbourhood plan, and that's at paragraph 3 of the report, and the relevant proposed policies at paragraph 4. It's worth noting that the Battle Neighbourhood Plan group submitted a pre-submission review of their plan before submitting the formal Regulation 16 consultation. This action is seen by your officers as a positive and is reflected in the proposed comments. The next stage is for Battle and Rother to jointly agree to appoint an independent examiner who will consider these comments along with all the other representations received during the consultation. The examiner will determine whether the plan meets the basic conditions and recommend whether the plan can proceed to referendum. The suggested comments are set out in the attached Appendix 1. Essentially, the policies and supporting text have been crafted to positively support development. So just picking up on some of the key points. The housing site allocations are considered to meet the residual targets for both Battle and Netherfield. It is also suggested that some rewording of the housing mix policy to prevent a conflict with the core strategy is put forward. With regard to the retail policy, whilst the plan does not make specific allocations, it is suggested this could be resolved with positive wording to support additional retail floor space in both the town centre and at the Market Square site. Paragraph 18 of the main report refers to this. With regards to employment land, the continued saving of the Rutherford's employment site will help protect the parish from future speculative employment proposals, and this is referred to in paragraph 19 of the main report. Therefore, it is recommended that the comments in Appendix 1 of this report be submitted with supporting material for consideration by the examiner, and that the Chief Executive be authorised to consider any modifications that may arise through the examination to secure a neighbourhood plan to be in general conformity with the adopted core strategy and the DASA. Thank you, Chairman. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Tim. Cabinet members who would like to ask a question or put a comment forward. Catherine Field. Catherine.
Yes, thank you. I don't want to ask a question, but I do want to comment on this because I'm very pleased to see this item on this agenda. This plan has taken an inordinately long time to get this far. And if one thing Battle needs, it is a neighbourhood plan, because we have been subject to a huge amount of random planning applications over the past few years, which have been passed for reasons that have sometimes defied the comprehension of every resident of Battle. So to have a plan and a framework to help us move forward, whilst acknowledging that some development will have to happen, I think is only a good thing. And I look forward to this process continuing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Kevin Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to pay tribute to the group that have put this together in Battle. It has literally been blood, sweat and tears, and they've gone through a number of chairmen, a number of committee members. A lot of the people on this group aren't town councillors, district councillors, any sort of councillor. They're just members of the public who have given up an inordinate amount of time and effort to do this. So just like any other parish, this is, I think, a lot more work when you get into it than actually it seems at the outset. So I'd like to make just pay tribute to those people who've done it, got this far, and let's hope we can just get this over the line. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we'd all endorse that without a doubt. A significant amount of work goes into this, and it takes such a long time, doesn't it? Councillor Sue Project.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a great fan of neighbourhood plans because they actually give you the answers to questions. Where can I build? And or where should the buildings go? And every neighbourhood plan over delivers on the numbers that they're supposed to produce. And having been every step of the way through the Salehurst and Robertsbridge neighbourhood plan, I do really recognise the work that goes into these things, huge amount, because the consultation alone is way, way, way more than we would do on our own local plan. So I really congratulate them. And as Councillor Dixon said, let's get this one over the line. And I'm very happy to second it if Councillor Reinhold is proposing it.
Yeah, if there are no other comments, if I can ask Jonathan, please just sum up and to move this report.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really pleased to be able to propose this Regulation 16 consultation submission. And again, to first and foremost congratulate Margaret Howell, who's the current chair of the steering group. And as Kevin said, there have been a few, and that's always tough when there's a change in that leadership role. You know, she's got this over the first line, and that is a pretty tough line to get over. You know, neighbourhood plans in larger towns are much more difficult to do due to the number of variables you have. You have many more issues, particularly in employment, and the issues with just getting residents engaged. You know, where you have populations over about 2,000, it's tough, and that is a key component to getting support. The officers have made a number of comments which may differ from the views of the battle group, but I don't think there's anything that I've looked at in there that's a real controversial issue, and they're just things to be left to the examiner and for those discussions. I don't think there'll be any real issues that come forward there, and I think it's absolutely within the right of the neighbourhood plan group to leave things in that they feel are right, and equally for officers to comment on those, and nobody should feel poorly about that. I really am pleased that the officers involved have worked really hard to overcome that one area within the plan that was a little bit tricky, and I want to really thank Nicola Waters and Julie Edwards for doing this. You know, that's not always been the case in the past. Very quickly, you know, there have been about 1,000 neighbourhood plans made in the UK, and there's about 1,600 more that are in process. And believe it or not, there's only been 9 that have failed examination and 6 failed referendum. And those that fail referendum usually do for one of two reasons. The neighbourhood plan group actually forcing a failure because they're in conflict, usually with the district council, or the other one is lack of community engagement. And so I'm really hoping that Battle have done a good job there. So I want us to be clear, as I do every time neighbourhood plans come up. You know, we as a district council want them to succeed at both examination and referendum, and must do everything we can do to help to support those groups. So we're absolutely pleased as punch to propose this, and I think Councillor Prochak has already indicated seconding.
Thank you for that. And Tim, perhaps take the comments back to your staff that it's been well received, and I'm sure the Battle of the residents and the groups that have put this there will acknowledge that work and the cooperation. Right, Lisa, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, members, Councillor Bayliss.
4.
Councillor Brewerton.
4.
Councillor Byrne.
4.
Councillor Dixon.
4.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Oliver.
4.
Councillor Prochak.
4.
Councillor Timby. 4. Councillor Vinehall.
4.
That's carried, Chairman.
Jolly good. Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on now to agenda item 9. This is the report letting of development site at Wainwright Road, Bexhill, to facilitate development of a new GP surgery at Wainwright Road, Bexhill. The report of Ben Hook, Head of Acquisitions, Transformation and Regeneration. Ben, it's nice to see you back with a nice haircut after your Christmas holiday, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and it was a much needed break. This report we're bringing forward. Members may remember that sort of, I think it was 2019, we brought back into our ownership the former Sharwoods factory site, and in both on both Wainwright Road and Beeching Road. This aspect relates to the very northern tip of the about 1 acre site of the Wainwright Road site, which is currently, as many members will be aware, being used as a testing centre for COVID-19. We've been approached by a developer who's working on behalf of 3 Bexhill practices. That is the Pebsham practice, the Collington practice, and the Sidley practice, to provide a one-stop town centre surgery with all of the sort of the top-notch modern facilities that you'd expect out of a new surgery, facilitating the town centre area. It's likely that this development will replace the Albert Road surgery and the C Road surgery in time, once that transition has been made. When we first bought this land, the purpose of it was to generate a revenue income, and the agreement that we've come to with the developer does just that. We're not seeking at this stage to input any significant capital of our own into this development. The developer will do that, but they are looking to pay us a passing rent on the land, which will help facilitate an increasing revenue stream. What I can announce to members tonight is that we've recently completed on the adjacent site of the which is currently occupied by Skinner's Shed, was the former Graham's they call trade counter, which has been vacant by them for some time and is now being used as a Skinner's Shed depot. We took that report to the Property Investment Panel earlier this year, last year, and we've recently completed on that purchase. So what that means in terms of development going forward is that by leasing this 1 acre plot at the northern tip of the Wainwright Road site, as you'll see on page 65, it will enable us to still develop a 3 acre plot to the south of that with direct access off of Wainwright Road. So it's not in any way going to compromise future development and regeneration at this site. So all we're seeking from Cabinet tonight is authorisation that we enter into the agreement with the developer for the lease of this land, which will enable the development of a new town-centred surgery that facilitates the patients at the 3 practices I outlined previously.
Thank you very much for that report, Ben. Are there members of Cabinet who would like to make any observations on the report before other members? Councillor Christine Bayliss.
Yeah, sorry, couldn't mute. This is a fantastic project. I've been following this quite closely. I know it falls under Councillor Dixon's portfolio, but I've been following this closely. It will be a real enhancement to Central Ward. It just falls into our ward, across the road from your ward, Councillor Oliver. But it will be a tremendous asset to the town centre, and also I do believe that it will, whilst you've got 3 surgeries merging into the one, there will be additional facilities there which could help us achieve our objectives around regeneration. So well done to the regeneration team, and I'm very happy to second this if a seconder is needed.
Thank you for that. Yeah, no, it's an exciting bit of business because it facilitates the use of a doctor's surgery in a prime town centre location, because the existing ones in Collington, Albert Road and C Road are really inadequate for the size of the town and the demands. I'm looking down here. Councillor Barnes.
Yes, Leader, the realisation of a long dream. I remember back when I was chairman of the Primary Care Trust, we were looking for ways to replace both Albert Road and Collington. And this is actually the future. We need to bring, because we're trying to strengthen the primary care end to try and keep people out of hospital and develop more and more services at that level, we shall need larger premises, better premises, and we will need, therefore, to develop medical centres. When I was chairman over in the other PCT in the tail end of the last decade, I was looking to try and get a similar thing in Seaford, and I was trying to persuade Lewis to invest in that. Lewis didn't, I think, see the benefit. So I'm grateful that we are actually facilitating this, and it will make a very steady, if small, income for us. But I would encourage us to look ahead and see whether we ought not to do what the developer is doing here, because we could earn a larger income and facilitate the primary care revolution elsewhere if we were actually to play an even more active part than we are here. But congratulations to Ben and his team. I think this is a good move forward, and it will guarantee us a reasonable return on our money. I'm happy actually to welcome this as a member of the Health and Wellbeing Board as well, because this is part and parcel of our strategy. Thank you very much, Leader.
Yeah, thank you for those kind words, John. Ben, would you like to just come back on that before I invite two other members who have asked to speak?
Yeah, it's just that final point of Councillor Barnes. Obviously, just to remind members that we are investing our own cash into the Barnhorn Road development, which we're looking to bring forward, which obviously encompasses the Little Common surgery, and that will be eventually a transfer from their current position into a brand new, fully functioning sort of super centre that we're agreeing with the CCG at the moment.
Yeah, very exciting. We're investing for the future. It's so vital. Councillor Sam Coleman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo everyone's comments about what an amazing move this is, and not in a time too soon, I think, considering everything that's going on at the moment. And I have to commend the amazing work of the Bexhill Primary Care Network in their response in terms of rolling out the vaccines to residents. I just wanted to ask Ben to confirm for me, because paragraph 7 in the report says that Siddeley Surgery will be taking space here, which is great news. But just, I know some residents were concerned. This is in addition to Siddeley Surgery's current site and not instead of.
Yeah, so this is in addition to their main site in Siddeley. That's not affected at all. But their current site at Albert Road, I believe their tenancy runs out in the next few years and is in desperate need of replacing. And they're going to be relocating that aspect of their service over to the new centre.
Fabulous, thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Good. And before I ask Kevin to sum up, Councillor Harmer, Kathy.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Yes, to echo everyone's sentiments about how marvellous it's going to be. And I'm sure we all remember our dear Stuart Earl mentioned this quite some time ago. It was his dream. And I wondered at which point it would be correct, maybe suggest it be named after Stuart Earl. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those sentiments. I knew Stuart was always working towards this type of central health surgery clinic area, whatever. So I'm sure that'll be taken and noted as and when it goes forward. Kevin, if I can invite you to sum up before we go to a vote on this, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Not much to add. Members will note that at the moment there is COVID-19 testing centre on that site. I don't know whether, we spoke about this before Christmas, Malcolm, I don't know whether you've got any clarification on how long that's going to be needed for, or if we have to exercise the determination of that site, what other alternatives we might have, because clearly a COVID-19 testing site is absolutely vital for the community at this time, and we can't be seen to be kicking them off site. Malcolm.
Chairman, I'll let Ben answer that if I may, but
and then I can come back if necessary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you for raising that point, Councillor. The testing centre obviously is in situ at the moment. The developer won't be taking possession of the land until planning permission is secured. So we've got quite some time before that occurs to get them through the planning process. One would hope that we're into a position where a COVID testing centre of that scale is not required by the time in which they take possession, sort of earliest at the end of this year.
Thank you, Ben. Did you want to add anything, Malcolm, or was that really?
No, I mean, other than to say that, we've worked with the various agencies to ensure there are COVID testing facilities within Bexhill. If needs be, we will continue to work with them and if necessary, look at alternative locations. If the worst case scenario comes, as Ben says, by that stage and we're not ready to move, then we will have to look at alternatives. But please rest assured, we will find those alternatives somewhere.
Thank you very much indeed. Kevin, are you there? Do we want to?
Thank you, Doug, and just pay tribute to those people working there in very difficult conditions and very muddy circumstances, having to go down there myself a couple of times. A very efficient and very welcome service that's unfortunately necessary. Well done to Graham and to Ben. Ben, the wheeler dealer of the council these days, another good deal for the community and for the council. And so I'd like to propose this as printed, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. And have I got someone to second this?
Yes, I second it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. If we can go to a vote on that, please, Lisa.
Councillor Bayliss.
For.
Councillor Brewerton.
Very much for.
Councillor Byrne.
For.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Oliver.
For.
Councillor Proshak.
For.
Councillor Tempe.
For.
Councillor Vinehall.
For.
That's carried unanimous, Chairman.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for that report. Then, if we can move on to agenda item 10. The review of the Housing, Homeless and Rough Sleeping Strategy 2019-2024. Report coming from Heads of Service, Housing and Community Acquisitions, Transformation and Regeneration, which will be Joe Powell. And the purpose of this report is to consider recommendations arising from the overview and scrutiny meeting on the 23rd of November 2020 regarding a review of the Housing, Homeless and Rough Sleeping Strategy. Now, I believe that Joe, you're going to lead this report.
If it's okay with you, Leader, I was going to introduce this one.
Oh, well, you really? I'm sorry. I beg your pardon.
That's fair enough.
It was Joe Ben, so okay.
Obviously this crosses very much crosses both our portfolios. So I mean, Joe might want to jump in at some point and just say, I mean, this was something that was discussed heavily at overview and scrutiny. The heads of service involved put together a number of proposals which were debated and discussed by the committee, and effectively what it is that since the housing, homelessness and rough sleeping strategy was conceived and has been, as we've been working on it, some targets have been achieved, and we think it's about time that new targets were set to ensure that we continue to stretch the organisation in making sure that we provide a good supply of housing and reduce homelessness and rough sleeping wherever we can. So there just to mention very quickly for you, for members of the cabinet, there's a slight error in the report as prepared. Obviously, in the intro, it says wards all Bexhill. It's not just Bexhill. This affects the entire district, and it's a strategy for the entire district. And as well as that, the officer recommendations are not for council. It's for cabinet to resolve at this stage the changes to the strategy and implementing the new targets that in line with the strategic priorities as set. Unless members particularly want me to, I won't go through them in detail. It's merely to say that the Appendix B outlines the targets that have been achieved through the improvement delivery plan, and the Appendix C provides the proposed new and amended targets that we're seeking to have incorporated into the improvement delivery plan. If there were a couple of additional requests from overview and scrutiny that investigations be undertaken to identify sites on which prefabricated buildings could be installed to be used for temporary accommodation. We are doing that now as a result of that recommendation, and obviously if Cabinet further endorse that, we'll continue that work, and that this be an annual review rather than periodical, and we're happy as officers to make sure that we report back to committees on an annual basis as part of that, through overview and scrutiny as part of their annual work plan.
Thank you for that, Ben, and forgive me for not quite identifying who was bringing it forward. Joe, do you want to add anything to this in any way before I invite Councillor Byrne?
Not a great deal to add, only to say that it's an expedient way forward in terms of the amount of change and challenges and the pace at which challenges have changed, I should say, with the onset of COVID and the implications longer term of COVID on homelessness and demand, particularly, and then obviously the implications of that on the demand, the supply side, sorry, in Ben's area. We really, we're taking a very close brief and making sure we review these outputs monthly, and making sure that we really make sure they're relevant and don't become redundant too quickly. And just to feedback that I think the report was well received by review and scrutiny, and I'm sure Councillor Byrne will attest to that. And Ben's highlighted the changes made, so thank you.
Yeah, I think that is a good point to make with regard to the work being done by the overview and scrutiny, and these recommendations that have come forward is a collaborative working, and that's very much to be noted. Councillor Project before Terry Byrne, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Just really want to congratulate the council on getting these temporary accommodation. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, a few years ago, when the Ombudsman found us guilty of actually mistreating someone who had to be sent out of Rother. And it's great that we can now do this. We can actually now house people in temporary accommodation within Rother, and so that's a huge step forward, huge. I did want to ask a question, and maybe I've got it wrong, but the government gave us funding to get rough sleepers housed at the beginning of the first lockdown, and it just really showed how it could be done. If you had the funding there, it could be done. Not only were they housed, but they were actually given support as well. And it just was almost magical that it's showing it could be done. As I understand it, the government have stopped that grant funding, but they haven't stopped it in Scotland and Wales. And I just wondered if there's any sign of that funding being continued.
Joe, would you like to respond on that, please?
Yeah, I'll try to. The funding is in place. The next steps accommodation pathway funding, they're calling it, and that takes us up to March this year to support the Everyone In initiative, which is those additional rough sleepers. It is unclear what will happen beyond then. It might be something to discuss offline, but it will be a challenging manoeuvre for any administration or government to reverse that approach. I'm not sure how they intend to resolve it, but we presently in Rother, for example, we have over 10 rough sleepers who wouldn't normally be in temporary accommodation in temporary accommodation. Across the county, we have over 100, and that's just in East Sussex. Brighton is an extraordinary amount. So how they, getting it done was really positive and a lot of work. Getting it undone is going to be even more, for want of a better phrase, perhaps. But getting it resolved without just putting people back out on the street is going to be really, really challenging. And what's been provided so far is certainly a helpful resolution of the symptoms of the problem, but it hasn't addressed the cause of the problem, which is a lack of suitable accommodation for these people and persons to live in permanently. We have also been awarded a grant to provide 60% funding for 4 units of temporary accommodation for this group specifically, which will be along a Housing First model, which we're bringing forward at the moment, and a sale is in process. But we some options are in process. So yeah, positive. But watch this space, and I'll be keeping Terry, Councillor Byrne, with me up to speed with announcements as they come forward.
So all of our rough sleepers are currently in and being supported.
We have one or two at any one time. I think there are over 10 across the county who for whatever reason, don't wish to come into accommodation and have refused it. But everyone who is out has been offered and continues to be offered accommodation, and crucially, differently from previous years, has specialist support in place from mental health services, social care services, which were in place previously, but may have been a bit more patchy. These are specialist teams through the Rough Sleeping Initiative, which is a county-wide initiative of which we form a key part. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Joe. I'm going to invite, I think it'll be John Barnes and then Paul Osborne before Terry sums up. Thank you.
Yes, Chairman. We may want, I think, over time to think of separating out these two elements of the strategy, because the housing one is really about trying to create affordable housing for a generation which is fast becoming either generation rent or, rather more troubling, generation living with your parents, which is not always desirable. That's a problem which is very long term, and which we've set up the housing company to begin to grapple with. I want to come back to that one, if I may, in a moment, but the success story, the silver lining, if you like, of COVID has been actually a success in dealing with the rough sleepers. And I think our officers deserve enormous congratulation on that. I think we do need to keep our members of Parliament in the picture because this problem isn't going to go away, and we don't want to lose the progress we've made in terms of putting support in place. There are problems out in the rural areas because one or two of the rough sleepers out there don't want to take accommodation in towns for fear they will be dragged into the drug scene or revert to alcohol. So rural rough sleeping is something which we need to keep an eye on because a town-based solution isn't always the right solution. Coming back to my main point though on housing, where I think it's not wholly within our control because most of the housing development will be private. I think our housing company will make a real contribution. But the government is still setting a target for us, which is going to make the land supply problem extremely difficult. They seem incapable of realizing that we are one of about 20 areas in the southeast that have over 80% of our land is AONB. So it does seem to me that alongside our housing strategy, we do need to be actually making quite strong representations about land availability for areas like us where most of the land is locked away and not able to be developed. The final point is to welcome your recommendation about prefabricated housing and sites, because we still have a financial gap on homelessness. And I think this is probably the quickest and most effective way of filling that. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you, John. Councillor Paul Osborne, please. Paul.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I thought I'd better just say that we gave it a fair hearing at scrutiny, and I'd just like to thank basically the officers Ben and Joe for listening to what we had to say, of which was numerous, and getting it into some sort of semblance of order so that we can make sense of it. So So no, that's all I wanted to say. And again, I think it's useful that we're going to look at it sort of on an annual basis. So we've actually got a document that works and we know if it's working or not. So that's all. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for those comments. The last non-cabinet comment, Councillor Paul Portel.
Thank you, Chair. I also welcome success concerning the way rough sleepers have been dealt with. I think it shows what can be achieved when the will is there, and I commend Joe and his team for achieving that locally. I think the challenge, as Joe has said, is I think the challenge is to ensure that the government doesn't reverse its approach on this. I think that possibly the Overview and Scrutiny Committee may need to monitor this more than once a year in order to make sure that there isn't a negative move at some future date, and that we keep our eye on the ball on this. So far so good, but I hope that after March the government will come up with new proposals. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for those comments. Terry, if I can ask you, Councillor Terry Byrne, to sum up and to move this report, please.
Thank you, Leader. The first thing I'd like to say is this report, plus the actions, we have measurable targets. We've already, as you will see from the report, replaced some targets because we've met them. And as Ben said, replace them with targets that still stretch the service, give us aspirations. I think this is very much the same philosophy as we've adopted in the corporate plan, in that it's not just a nice cuddly statements about let's house all the homeless. There's some real targets, real actions, and things we can measure our progress against. To tackle Councillor Cortell's point, those targets are being monitored a lot more often than once a year, and are being modified and continually moved forward. There's almost nothing you do in housing that isn't connected to just about everything else that you do in housing. And certainly with the various bits of money coming from Westminster, the various initiatives, both county and local and rural, this is always going to be a moving target. But I think this document, the strategy is absolutely excellent, and the structure around implementing that strategy is what I think is a real big step forward. I'd like to just, if you can look at page 69, priority 3, improving the quality and suitability of existing housing and new build housing. Now, I think that is something we really can impact on. There's this huge nebulous area of private sector rented accommodation. And as you'll see from item 13, we're trying to do something about that as well. But it is something that we really need to do. And we are now taking really positive steps towards doing that, right from what we build, the materials we use, right through to what we've already got and how we try and convince landlords or coerce landlords into improving it. Last thing I'd like to say is about the Rough Sleeper initiative. It wasn't just getting more money and emphasis. It was very imaginative use of the various services. Each rough sleeper, you almost need to fine tune the service that you emphasize on each particular case. And I think that's where the success has come from, understanding the needs and having the ability to meet those needs. And it's resulted not just, as Ben said, some of the people no longer rough sleeping, but no longer rough sleeping in the future. These are people who have services wrapped around them, who hopefully their lives are going to be back on track. So I think this exercise of everybody started off with everybody in, I think has had some marvellous spin-offs in how we tune our services to deal with rough sleepers. So overall, I think this is real progress. It shows the whole document shows a new attitude, well, not a new, but a refocused attitude, not just to platitudes, but to real actions that you can monitor month on month on month and see how you're doing, and not be afraid to stretch those targets if you think something's more achievable. So with no more to say than that, then I recommend this, and I would like to move this motion.
Thank you, Terry.
I'd like to second, please, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Timpey. If we can, please, Lisa, take a vote on this.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, members, Councillor Bayliss.
For.
Councillor Broughton.
For.
Councillor Byrne.
For.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Oliver.
For.
Councillor Proshak.
For.
Councillor Timpey.
For.
Councillor Vinehall.
For.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for everybody that's been involved in bringing that forward. If we can move into agenda item 11, please, which is, I've got it right this time, it's a report from Joe Powell, Head of Housing and Community, re the Bexhill East Parade Shelter 1. The purpose of this report is to inform members of the restoration of the Bexhill Promenade Shelter 1 with the support of Bexhill Heritage, and to seek approval to grant a lease to Bexhill Heritage upon completion of the works. Joe, if I could invite you, please, to lead this report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed. As the report describes, we propose to restore Bexhill Promenade Shelter 1 with the support of Bexhill Heritage, and seek the approval to grant a lease to Bexhill Heritage to operate the shelter as a community hub. So the report describes the benefits of the shelters in a general sense to the seafront at Bexhill, and an important feature of the area, and I'm sure members will agree. The location of the bandstand Shelter 1 is in Appendix A, for those that aren't familiar. In broad terms, the Bexhill Heritage proposed to utilise their volunteer network to support those aspects of the restoration that they can achieve and complete. We will still have to tender and contract, I should say, the more specialist elements of the restoration. And they had the ambition of, once that's complete, of leasing it, as I say, and developing it into a cultural and information centre and bandstand for music again, as it once had historically. And the details of their proposals are at Appendix B in more detail. And aside from the ambition to restore Shelter 1, both Shelters 1 and 4 are in need of repair, rather than necessarily a full restoration, but they are in need of repair. So, I mean, without taking this option, the option does remain just to repair them, and as it happens, that the cost of such is equivalent, slightly more, £1,000 more at £61,000 than working with Bexhill Heritage, due to the value they add from the volunteer labour contribution. So yeah, a breakdown of the cost for you at Appendix C as well. So the lease is as I say, would be another benefit, of the lease is that it's a full repairing lease, and so the ongoing maintenance liability would no longer fall on the council. So essentially, the asset would be in part devolved. Some of the structural elements would still require council as freeholder input, but yeah. So I hope a fairly straightforward report. I hope something members will be behind, and yeah, happy to take questions.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joe. They are listed, aren't they? These shelters, I believe.
They are.
They are listed, yeah, and of course, if with the severe weather that that one gets on the seafront, the two that have been restored, absolutely tremendous quality of work, and the second one there that's got this music playing in it. I don't know whether people have been there, but it really is a wonderful feature, and the quality of workmanship was just second to none. So that's such a valued point there. And if we didn't restore them and look after them, they would just disappear into the ocean, and we wouldn't want that to be the case. So if I can invite, right, who have I got? Yes, Councillor Bayliss.
Yes, Chair, can I declare a non-pecuniary interest in that I'm a member of Bexhill Heritage? I should have declared that right at the beginning of the meeting, but I've put it in the chat. And just say that I just support this project and just support everything that you've just mentioned in relation to this. I think the Bexhill Heritage have done a fantastic job on the shelter number 3, I think. But amazing.
Thank you for those comments, Christine. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I should also declare that I'm a member of Bexhill Heritage, though it's not pecuniary or whatever. This is absolutely tremendous. It's in the bandstand is in my ward, as are the restored shelters, and we're doing some wonderful things. We've got a vision really for that side of the promenade. We already have the new wave vision on one side, which creates a sort of slightly more modern ethos. Our side, the east side, has got this genuine Edwardian feel to it, and I just think that the work that the heritage people are doing is absolutely wonderful. The quality is great, and as well as having the bandstand there, it'll enhance the whole feeling of that side of the promenade, together with the things we're planning to do, maybe with the car parking area around the angling club, maybe look at beach access for the disabled. There's all sorts of good things going on that side. So I see this as the first plank, if you like, in the sort of construction of a whole new look, one old look. For that side of the promenade, and really make it a central part of the feature of what we're going to offer on that side of the town.
Thank you, Terry. Councillor Catherine Field, please.
Yes, thank you. I very much support this project. Some time ago, before I was locked down and I was walking the dogs in Bexhill, I thought then what wonderful things these shelters were. Great design, and of course design has function attached to it as well, and you can shelter on every side of these shelters. Look at the view, look at the passing world, a really great thing. And I thought to myself, what a contrast with what I had seen earlier in my walk on the west side of the promenade, when there were people genuinely, literally huddling in what was supposed to be sheltering them in those new buildings which we call shelters. They were looking, I have to say, extremely tatty. And my question is, I just wanted to check really, I presume they are subject to a regular maintenance programme, because they certainly look like they need it. It lets us down, just that side of the promenade, unlike what's happening in the east, which is going to be great. Thank you.
Joe, could you respond on the maintenance arrangements for the West Parade shelters?
They are indeed, part of a maintenance programme. The maintenance budget we can look at, Catherine, but there is a Councillor Field, sorry, there is a great number of items in the public realm that have to be met. So it is a question of prioritising, and often health and safety measures take priority. But yes, we can certainly look at that though, Councillor Field. Thank you for raising it. And I think there is an extent to which Bexhill Seafront is a window to the wider district and to the area generally. So it is important to have our shop window in as good an order as possible, I think, or one of our shop windows.
Yep, thank you for that. What I like about the East Parade shelters is I like the red, white and green colours. I think they're the old Bexhill town colours going back into the 1800s, and I think it's just so, such a symbol of the Edwardian days. Right, Jonathan Vinehall.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very supportive, particularly of Bexhill Heritage. 18 months ago, they hadn't been able to get a meeting with the council, certainly in the planning area at all, and we facilitated that. And they are a really hard-working, dedicated group, like so many we want to work with, and to form these really good relationships. So absolutely support this. I would like to add to the recommendations that to propose that this be actually funded from the Bexhill portion of the CIL. There's plenty of money in that fund to do that. It's a fantastic local asset, and this is precisely what the local CIL fund is for. and that would also take the pressure off the district council's income expenses, current income expenses. So I would like to put that forward. Absolutely fully support it. Fantastic.
Thank you, Jonathan. Where are we, Sue? Councillor Sue Project, please.
I second that amendment to the recommendation that Councillor Vinehall has just made, and also adding I can remember, and I think Councillor Bayliss might remember, years ago, back in the 90s, there was something called Restoring the Spirit of Place, which was for Bexhill, and that was based on the Edwardian character of Bexhill. And it was for the whole of the town centre, and it talked about design of seats, of lights, and of course these shelters. That was pushed aside, and what we have now is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to get the shelters upgraded. And they're so popular, those shelters, because people like to see things of the past looked after. And as Councillor Fielder said, they're proper shelters. You can actually sit in them and be sheltered. So I totally support them, and the welcome, the offer, the expertise and the experience that's going to be put into them. Really welcome that. The other thing is, of course, this is great value for money. Great value for money. So don't ask me about the Western End, whether that was value for money. But
Okay,
this really is value for money.
We'll move on from there then, Sue. Thank you very much indeed. And the one thing about the Heritage Group, their crafts and the meticulous way they attend to it. I've watched them down there on occasions. They really are very skilled and a lot of passion in what they're doing. Councillor Brewerton, Jay.
Thank you. I feel like I'm reiterating a lot of what has already been said, but I want to say Bexhill Heritage, what a fantastic group. A really strong, dedicated group of volunteers that are protecting the heritage of Bexhill. They have really contributed thousands of hours to protecting many assets across the town, and I'm really proud of them, really proud that some of them are my friends, really proud to know the group and the other members that I've met. So they really deserve to be commended, especially by all the comments that we've had here tonight. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Brian Drayson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Being a new boy and not only being in Rother and Bexhill for less than 4 years, I just want to be controversial. I do welcome this report, but actually some of us quite like the West Parade shelters, although they don't work as shelters. And I love the fact that we've got two distinct separate parades with different identities, and people can enjoy both when they walk along the seafront. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are you going to add something new, Paul, if I invite you to say something, because we need to push on?
Simply, I also welcome what's been the enthusiasm of several other councillors concerning these shelters, but there is, and particularly the value for money point that Councillor Proshak made. But there is another area where there is considerable value for money which might be ignored, and that is the nurseries at Edgerton Park. Are we still committed to
Paul,
the
can we
July...
move on? This is a report about the East Parade shelters, and I really don't want to diverse into something other than what's on the report. So I will ask Councillor Timpey Hazel, if you could sort of sum up, please, and then we'll move this forward. We've still got 2 or 3 more items to deal with tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, everything's pretty much been said that I was going to say, but that's great. Just one thing, the very first conversation I ever had with an officer when I was made a councillor 18 months ago was with Joe Powell, and it was about the shelters. And I'm absolutely thrilled that he and his team and Bexhill Heritage have come together as a team and are going to put this forward for us as a focal point on our seafront, and it's in my ward as well. But I'm also a member of Bexhill Heritage, very, very proud of them. And 2 people in particular, Steve and Ray, who have just worked so hard on this proposal. And it's very, very professional. And I think everyone will be thrilled at the value of their hours that they're going to give us It's like a gift, really, and so they are to be commended. And I'd like to move that we accept this with the amendment about the SIL money. Thank you.
Do we have someone to second that motion with the amendment? If that can be noted, please. Lisa, Terry, are you supporting this?
Yes, happy to second.
Very good. Okay, Lisa, if we could vote on this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, members. Councillor Bayliss.
For.
Councillor Brewerton. For. Councillor Byrne.
For.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Oliver.
For.
Councillor Proshak. For. Councillor Tempe.
For.
Councillor Vinehall.
For.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you for that, and I would just like to acknowledge the report that that came forward from Bexhill Heritage Appendix B. You know, what a fantastic report they put there with the photographs in order for us to sort of create this atmosphere of our East Parade and all the right things of Bexhill in these Edwardian days. Yeah, very exciting. Well done. Where are we? Agenda 12, item 12. Okay, fine. A report of Anna Evitt, Neighbourhood Services Team Leader. Purpose of report to approve plans to construct a radio-controlled car racing track at St Mary's Recreation Ground for exclusive use by the 1066 Racing. Right, this is going to be brought forward. Is Anna with us tonight? No?
It's me, sorry. Yeah, should have had my name on the
Yep, okay, so, yep. I've got you down. Thank you for that then, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Anna, for drafting the report. I should say for Anna. Just to summarise, the reason for bringing this forward is that we need to dispose of the land upon which the proposed track would sit in St Mary's. The 1066 Racing is an outdoor. They would like an outdoor base for their activity. They currently operate up in Hornside Park in Hastings. They have between about 40 to 80 competitors at any one time, and they meet once a fortnight to, conduct their activity with the cars, remote control cars. We've had in-depth discussions with 1066 Racing, and they've identified St Mary's Recreation Ground, as I say, as being suitable. And there's an outline of the plans at Appendix A. We conducted a demonstration back in August with the club and invited all local residents by hand delivering invitations to residents with contact details of questions they might have, etc. And a really successful event and well attended, and well, I think I'm right in saying unanimous support from people on the day, residents on the day for the activity. And we're still communicating with residents as we go forward as well. And it's proposed to award the 1066 Racing a non-secure full repairing lease at a peppercorn rate of £1, and for them to occasionally hold larger events as well as their regular event, 2 weekly. Just to reassure members, the cars are about a 1/10 scale ratio to a normal car. They don't make a lot of noise. They're zero carbon. There is, I think, a slight noise, but not to a disturbing degree. And the cost of installing the AstroTurf that we required is relatively low and will be entirely funded by the club. So again, I hope something that members would support, and I'm happy to take questions on it.
Thank you very much for that, Joe. I was there back in August. It was really great fun to watch these people use this really smart equipment. You know, it really is very imaginative. It's very clever. It's very exciting, and I think it's a first. And I think it's such a novel sort of thing for us to be supporting. I think Councillor Sam Coleman, I think you were there on the day, Sam.
Yes, I was, and back when socially distanced events like that were allowed. Hopefully we'll be able to get back to such events in the future. I think this is an incredible opportunity for Sidley. It's when we're looking at sort of trying to get people active, trying to get people outside, and this is an activity that isn't so physically demanding, but it does require actually leaving the house, going outside, getting some fresh air, doing something that's competitive, that gets the adrenaline going. And I had a go. It was great fun, and I think the report mentions Sidley Cricket Club. I think if we can get them a home, if we can find a home for Sidley Football Club, if the skate park and BMX track projects go ahead, then this will all sort of parcel together and make Sidley once again a hub for sort of sports and recreation, as it once was when you kept scores at Sidley Sports Ground in your youth, Chair.
I just think that, again, this is a great example that the actual 1066 racing are so well organised. Andrew Coley, who runs this group with others, that they are so well organised, and that's really it's nice to be involved with people in that sort of way. Before I ask Jay Brewerton to sum up, I've got Hazel and Terry, please. Hazel Timpey.
Yeah, I just wanted to fully support this. I too went along to the wonderful day that they held, and they are very, very professional. But most of all, it's actually loads of fun. So I do hope that everyone else can support this report. Thank you.
And Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chair. This is really just a commercial for model making in general. It's not just electric car racing. The amount of education that can go into that with youngsters, how the cars work, the meticulous patience you need to keep one of those things, to build it in the first place and to keep it running. And as you say, Leader, it's such a wonderfully organised club that it does provide a socially cohesive activity. But I really think it's important. The youth aspect of this is really important. Maybe attracts a different sort of youth from the skate parks, the more active sort of sports. But for the slightly nerdy electronics kids, this one's going to be wonderful, and I wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you, Terry. For all ages, I understand, because I think you were enjoying it there. So it's nice to see all ages enjoying such fun in this particular activity. Jay, if you could sum up and move the motion, please.
Thank you. I just want to reassure some of the residents that are concerned. It is genuinely a really sensible, safe and quiet sport. These are really high-tech cars. There's no whirring noises that are really irritating at different pitches. There's a wide spectrum of people that are involved, all ages, from young to old, from professional business backgrounds, families to retirees, excluding our own councillors. So they usually meet fortnightly. There's about 10 to 40 people that will be at any meet. And at special events, the most they've ever had was 70 individuals, 70 participants. They've never yet exceeded that. So club members may occasionally use the facility for practice, but that's quite rare. I visited with my kids and some friends, and we spent a good couple of hours there. My 8-year-old daughter was so impressed. She actually gave away all her birthday money and her Christmas money and her pocket money to buy one of the cars, which really impressed me. And it has, as Terry just mentioned, been a very educational experience, because we're forever putting the thing back together again. So we can't wait until it officially opens. So really looking forward to seeing that up there. And as Councillor Coleman mentioned, we're going to have a number of other great sporting facilities there in the near distant future. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a really good news story. You're moving that. Jonathan, I think, is looking to second that motion. Jonathan?
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you very much indeed. And if we can take a vote, Elisa, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. Councillor Bayliss.
4.
Councillor Brewerton.
4.
Councillor Byrne.
4.
Councillor Dixon.
4.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Oliver.
4.
Councillor Proshak.
4.
Councillor Tempe. 4. Councillor Vinehall.
I'll say 4. And when COVID is finished, how about a member and officer out day at the at the radio controlled racing?
I'm sure that will be arranged.
Thank you, Chairman. That's carried.
Thank you very much, Lisa. If we can move on to agenda item 13, this report, private sector housing enforcement policy and civil penalties and financial penalties policy. Wow. A report from Richard Parker Harding, Head of Environmental Services, Licensing and Community Safety. This is a statutory report, I take it, Richard, if you can lead on that, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, this report seeks to amend our existing private sector housing enforcement policy in the light of the new regulations, which are the Electrical Safety Regulations 2020. These electrical safety regulations now require that landlords carry out electrical safety checks before properties are let, and then periodic inspections every 5 years. The council has the ability to prosecute a landlord if they don't comply with the electrical safety regulations, but there's also the ability to impose a civil penalty. The council has already adopted a policy for civil penalties, which sets out how we calculate what sum to impose as a civil penalty. And at the moment, we do this for cases where landlords have failed to comply with improvement notices served by the council. It's therefore recommended that we use existing policy and adapt it for using the electrical safety regulations. And this would mean that a landlord which didn't comply with the regulations could be subject to a civil penalty. The policy has been tested by way of an appeal to a first tier property tribunal, which upheld our policy and said it was robust. We've only issued one civil penalty under the existing regulations, but we recommend that we use existing policy for the electrical safety regulations.
Thank you very much for that, Richard. Before we go forward, I think there are one or two declarations that have come up in the meeting chat, which I believe, Lisa, am I right saying that need to be verbally made?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Thank you. So those that have made a personal interest as a landlord, if you could just declare that interest, please. Councillor Projak.
Councillor Vine will declare personal.
Councillor Bayliss? No. Councillor Paul Osborne?
Yes, we declare personal interest as a landlord, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that report, Richard. Christine, are you making a comment, I think?
Chairman, also Councillor Tony Ganley declaring a personal interest as a landlord.
Oh, thank you very much, Tony. I didn't catch that one. Thank you. If there's nobody else looking to make a declaration on this, invite Councillor Bayliss.
Yes. Can I really welcome this report, and also take this opportunity to welcome the increased focus on making sure that the private sector housing and private landlords comply with the law. I expect in central Bexhill we probably got a high proportion of private sector rented accommodation, and some of the examples that I've seen, some of the premises that I've seen are, really jaw-dropping on occasions. So I really welcome this report. I welcome the increased focus on it. Is it possible for officers to draw up some sort of handy guide for councillors when you're visiting somebody, a resident who has a complaint, a handy guide where you can signpost? I'm not saying you should be offering any advice. I wouldn't want to offer any advice, but signpost people to where we need to point them at, when we come across them and they're obviously living in substandard accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Christine. Do you want to sum up on this, Terry?
Yes, please. Yes, please. This is a very good report. I think Richard Parker Harding is underplaying it slightly in that he says we are merely updating a policy we already have. Under his guidance, that policy has become a lot more firm. And as he says, we've already explored the civil penalties route. And I think this sent echoes through the private rented sector, certainly sent echoes through the hallowed halls of our service, of our housing providers. And I think this also goes alongside an initiative that he's undertaken to formalise the way in which we hear of complaints that have been made against housing associations. And we've made great strides with that. So even though this is very much procedural, it's signpost, if you like, the way in which we are trying to get a grip of the quality of the private rented sector. And as Councillor Bayliss says, some people, for some reason, feel they almost don't deserve an improvement. They live in some dreadful accommodation. And I think it's quite reasonable for any councillor visiting to say, look, you don't have to put up with this, and to signpost them as to where they should make their complaint. I would say initially the complaint should be to a housing association if it's a housing association property, because, you know, they are their partners and we have a more formal way of dealing with them. But certainly if it's a private landlord, again, with this strategy, widened out to cover electrical faults as well, and with a more active, if you like, exercising the powers within this strategy more actively, I think we've got a chance of finally dragging our substandard rented sector into some sort of decent condition. So, as I said with item 10, it's very rare for anything in housing not to connect with absolutely everything else in housing. But this is just another incident of how we're trying to get a grip of the whole way in which rather accommodates those people who are not lucky enough to be able to afford housing. So, yeah, I welcome this, and I really welcome Richard's initiative in putting forward this strategy, the amendment to the strategy, but the real initiative is using this strategy for enforcing rectification of problems. So yes, I support this wholeheartedly, and I'd like to move the report.
And have I got someone to second this report? Councillor Brewerton. Lisa, if we can go for a vote on this report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bayliss. Councillor Brewerton. Councillor Byrne.
4.
Councillor Dixon.
4.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Oliver.
4.
Councillor Proshak.
4.
Councillor Tempe.
4.
Councillor Vinehall.
4.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Lisa. While we've got Richard here, I'd just like to echo the sentiments of all members who are in attendance tonight for the work that the Environmental Services team have been putting into this COVID situation. They very much are part of the front line and very much in the forefront of it all. And thank you, Richard, for you and your team, the work you had to do with regard the fisheries changes, etc., all that's going on in this current lockdown of where people are, you know, somewhat sort of fatigued and feeling a little bit scary out there at times. I think there's a great acknowledgement of the work you and your team are putting there, and it's so easy to just let that go past us. That's part of your job, get on with it. But no, we do appreciate it, and thank you so much for all that, and please convey that back to your team, because it's so important, and thank you for that. Right, if we can move on. Thank you. If we can move on to where I need to move on now. Agenda item 14, which is the review of the Council's Constitution, report of Malcolm Johnson, Chief Executive, to agree the process, scope and timescale for undertaking a review of the Constitution. Malcolm, if I can ask you to introduce this report. It's something that this administration are quite keen that the Constitution is revisited. It's quite some time ago. When various things were changed, and it's quite apparent that there are some needs to revisit. I hope you're still with us, Malcolm.
Yes, Chairman. Yes, I'm still here. Thank you very much.
I didn't see you. Sorry.
It's all right. No, I think the report itself is fairly self-explanatory. You know, members and officers have recognised the need to update the Constitution. I think the Constitution should be viewed as a positive document for us in terms of enabling us to move forward. So the recommendations are that we we have a steering group that looks at it and works its way through the constitution, in tandem with the emerging corporate plan, because bear in mind that the constitution is there to enable the council to deliver the issues it needs to deliver on. So unless members have any questions, I shall leave it at that, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. If I could invite Catherine Field, please.
Yes, thank you. I very much welcome this. I have been mildly irritated on occasion when I've been told, no, you can't do that, it's not in the Constitution. So a review of the Constitution, I think, is very timely and a very good thing. I would like to say, though, I do think the steering group, which I don't believe has to be politically balanced, I do think it really should be politically balanced. We're all members of the council. We all have to abide by the Constitution. And I think we need to be doing this by consensus across all groups on the council. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Fine. Jonathan.
Absolutely supported. As it might seem rather boring, but as a regular reader of the Constitution, I'm more than happy to be involved if asked. As I said, I always recommend people read it because that they are the rules of the council and how we get things done. And sometimes people feel that things aren't getting done, and it's because they haven't actually understood the process. So happy to be involved.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor John Barnes. John?
Chairman, I draw a clear distinction between the objective and what else I'm going to say. I'm totally in favour of reviewing the Constitution, and I understand the reasons why you want to bring the steering group forward in the way you do. I agree with Councillor Field. It seems to me it's absolutely essential that we stick to the political balance rules. I'll come back to that one in a moment. I'm more worried when I look at the terms of reference. You start with something which seems to be absolutely fine. You make recommendations under Article 15 to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. But then when I come down to the approach and look at bullet point 3 and the timetable, Overview and Scrutiny is relegated to a consultative role, and the Cabinet is going to look at this committee's recommendations as if Overview and Scrutiny have been consulted. That, I'm afraid, is not what Article 15 says. So I think you need to make recommendations from this group to Overview and Scrutiny. They comment, then it goes to Cabinet and then on to Council. And I think, therefore, the approach and the action do need to be reworded to respect the existing Constitution. My last point is a slightly odd one. I've really looked at the last point, and given we are an open and transparent council, why on earth are we holding the meeting of the steering group in private? It seems to me you're about to take its results out to consultation. The people will understand it much better if they actually are privy to the discussions which have led to the recommendations. And so I would recommend that this committee meets in public. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, John. Malcolm, would you just like to respond on those 2 points that were raised?
I will check Councillor Barnes' first point. To be perfectly frank, if members wish to have their deliberations on the Constitution held in public and the public are interested in it, then far be it from me to question whether they should be excluded. I think the issue was that this is very much a procedural point that will come back to Cabinet and on to full council, because bear in mind full council has to agree Constitution. So it's really a call for members on that front.
Okay. Councillor Projak.
Yes, I think, first of all, I agree with Councillor Field that it should be a cross-party working group. Happy as well for the changes that Councillor Barnes has suggested in terms of procedure. And I think we should always assume that council meetings are in public unless there is a good reason for it not to be. So it should always be the first stuff is always should be in public. So I'm very happy to support those changes, and I don't think we need to vote or get the wording on each of them. I'm sure Malcolm can actually manage to get those points through, ready for the first meeting. And we do need, it's so out of date, our constitution. It's extraordinary. When you do need to read it, for whatever reason, you think, what? And I think we are going to need some outside help for this, some expertise maybe from outside, just to help us on our way. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sue. Catherine, I can't remember whether I've asked you to speak or not, or are you coming back a second time?
You have, but I wanted to come back a second time because of something Councillor Barnes said. I don't know if I've misunderstood what I've read or misunderstood what I heard him say, but he talked about consultation and I wasn't sure who was being consulted, because this is an internal council matter, I would have thought. Thank you.
Right. Where are we on this? Malcolm?
If I can comment, actually,
please,
Chairman, if you actually look at 3 on the bullet points under approach, and if you look down at action, it refers carry out public consultation with all members, OSC and public. Now, leaving aside the point that I think the route has to be through the oversight and scrutiny, I don't understand, if there's not to be public consultation, why those things are in at 3 and under action.
Malcolm, would you like to comment?
Chairman, if I may say, I think that this review of the Constitution is an opportunity for members to have a fundamental look at the way we lay out what we do, and there are several approaches to it. Ours are laid out in articles. Other people lay them out differently. I entirely agree with Councillor Project's comment that I think we will need some external advice on this, and I think we should use some external advice, because I think what we should do is approach people who have experience of looking at constitutions of other authorities. Some parts of our constitution are very internally focused. Other parts may or may not relate to how the public will view us. And I think it is important that we keep open the option of public consultation on those bits where there's a direct impact on our dealings with the public. I don't think for a moment that's not what Councillor Field is saying. I just think it's, this is an opportunity to have a really fundamental review. We may come up with something quite startlingly different that may present the council in a different light. And I think we shouldn't remove anything from that. I take Councillor Barnes' point, and I think Councillor Project has already made this point, that we can bring in the results of that consultation through overview and scrutiny, because this is policy development that should be fed through scrutiny, and we can include that within our timetable. I'm happy if members are happy that we make the subsequent adjustments, taking Councillor Barnes' point on board, and also acknowledging that we may need to consult the public. But again, that will be a view coming out of the steering group, at what point and on what issues the steering group feel we should be consulting the public.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarity, Malcolm. Councillor Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. Malcolm Johnson has just said exactly what I felt, so I'll say no more. Thank you.
Well done, great minds. Okay, let's move forward where we are at the moment. I think that the makeup of the group, I'd like to feel that we could deal with this after tonight's meeting, Lisa, if that's okay, where we have the breakdown of 3 Conservatives, 2 Lib Dems and 3 Association of Independents. But there will be the opportunity to give any other seats away if necessary. So perhaps, Carl, you could come back to Lisa with nominations of members from your group that would like to work on this particular piece of work that's going forward. So if we can, do we need, yes we do, hold on. Yeah, so we need to take a vote on this as it is, with Malcolm amending those couple of points, which I think we're quite happy with, yeah?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think I had a mover and a seconder, however. If you can just do that for me.
I'm going to move it, I suppose. Yes, I ought to move this, and if someone can second it, I would be grateful.
I'm seconding.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, members. Right, Councillor Bayliss.
For.
Councillor Brereton.
For.
Councillor Byrne.
For.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Oliver.
For.
Councillor Proshak.
For.
Councillor Tempe.
For.
Councillor Vinehall.
For.
That's carried unanimous, Chair.
That brings our meeting to an end, so we can close the meeting at something like 20:35. Thank you for everyone for attending. Stay safe, everybody, and be careful. And